The Lego sun spilled like fire across the glass walls of the Okafor estate, making the mansion shimmer as if it were made of diamonds. From the outside, nothing looked more perfect. Adam, Okafor, Aries, philanthropist, and the only daughter of the late Chief Okafor, lived there with her husband, Kemi, a man everyone praised as ambitious and respectable. The papers called them Nigeria's golden couple. When they arrived at galas, cameras flashed. When they walked into boardrooms, silence followed. To the world, their life was flawless. But inside those gilded gates, not everything gleamed. At the mansion's entrance, a tall iron gate stretched like the arms of a silent sentinel, and there stood Isa, the gateman. To visitors, he was invisible, just another uniformed servant who opened and closed doors. But to Adam, Isa was the last echo of her father's loyalty. Years ago, when Chief Okafor caught Isa sleeping hungry outside the gates during a rainstorm, he gave the young man food, clothes, and work. A man who guards my home will never sleep outside it. From that day, Isa swore his life would serve this family. Even after the chief's death, he never wavered. Still, no one truly saw him, not even Adam. She was busy trying to preserve her father's empire, balancing charity work with business demands, and smoothing over Kemi's frequent absences. That morning, Kemi came downstairs sharply dressed, a navy suit hugging his frame. His cologne arrived before his voice. "Sweetheart, don't wait for me tonight. The board wants me late in a koi," he said, slipping his watch onto his wrist. His smile was flawless, but his eyes shifted too quickly. Adam frowned slightly. "Another late night, Kemi." He kissed her forehead with practiced ease. "You worry too much, my love. Enjoy the house. Enjoy life. Let me carry the stress." The sound of iron creaking announced Isa opening the gate. The black Mercedes purred out of the compound, carrying Kemi away, his phone already glued to his ear. Adam lingered by the window, watching him vanish. For a moment, her face softened into sadness. Her father had always said, "Don't just love the words of a man. Watch his footsteps." And lately, Kemi's footsteps had grown more secretive than ever. She turned back to her desk, flipping through files her father had left behind, but something nodded at her: property transfer records she'd never signed, accounts she didn't recall approving. Outside, Isa straightened after the car disappeared. He too had noticed Kemi's late nights, the strange women, the hushed phone calls. Silently he promised, "If trouble comes for Madame Adam, I will not stand and watch." The mansion stood tall in the morning light, but beneath the polished marble, cracks were already forming. And none of them knew that within weeks, a kiss at this very gate would change everything forever. The next morning, Adam entered her father's study. Dark mahogany shelves, ledgers, his handwriting lingering like whispers. She opened a folder marked "Not for Sale." Prime properties transferred. Her signature forged. Why would Kemi hide this? A knock. It was Kemi. He smiled warmly, but his eyes flickered to the file she hid. "I'll be out late again. Investors." That evening the Mercedes returned. Isa opened the gate and smelled perfume not belonging to Adam. Through the glass, he saw a manicured hand slip from Kemi's shoulder. "Oga." Kemi warned him quietly. "Not a word." Later, Adam stood alone on the balcony, her shoulders heavy. Isa wanted to speak, but what could a gateman say to a woman born into wealth? Still, He remembered Chief Okafor's words. One day, Isa, it may be you standing when others run. Protect my daughter. He whispered into the night. Chief, I see the storm coming. I will not let her fall. What he did not know was how close the storm already was. At midnight, Kemi arrived home laughing softly into the phone. A woman's voice whispering back, Yes, my. The Lego sun spilled like fire across the glass walls of the Okafor estate, making the mansion shimmer as if it were made of diamonds. From the outside, nothing looked more perfect. Adam, Okafor, Aries, philanthropist, and the only daughter of the late Chief Okafor, lived there with her husband, Kemi, a man everyone praised as ambitious and respectable. The papers called them Nigeria's golden couple. When they arrived at galas, cameras flashed. When they walked into boardrooms, silence followed. To the world, their life was flawless. But inside those gilded gates, not everything gleamed. At the mansion's entrance, a tall iron gate stretched like the arms of a silent sentinel, and there stood Isa, the gateman. To visitors, he was invisible, just another uniformed servant who opened and closed doors. But to Adam, Isa was the last echo of her father's loyalty. Years ago, when Chief Okafor caught Isa sleeping hungry outside the gates during a rainstorm, he gave the young man food, clothes, and work. A man who guards my home will never sleep outside it. From that day, Isa swore his life would serve this family. Even after the chief's death, he never wavered. Still, no one truly saw him, not even Adam. She was busy trying to preserve her father's empire, balancing charity work with business demands, and smoothing over Kemi's frequent absences. That morning, Kemi came downstairs sharply dressed, a navy suit hugging his frame. His cologne arrived before his voice. Sweetheart, don't wait for me tonight. The board wants me late in a koi, he said, slipping his watch onto his wrist. His smile was flawless, but his eyes shifted too quickly. Adam frowned slightly. Another late night, Kemi. He kissed her forehead with practiced ease. You worry too much, my love. Enjoy the house. Enjoy life. Let me carry the stress. The sound of iron creaking announced Isa opening the gate. The black Mercedes purred out of the compound, carrying Kemi away, his phone already. The Lego sun spilled like fire across the glass walls of the Okafor estate, making the mansion shimmer as if it were made of diamonds. From the outside, nothing looked more perfect. Adam, Okafor, Aries, philanthropist, and the only daughter of the late Chief Okafor, lived there with her husband, Kemi, a man everyone praised as ambitious and respectable. The papers called them Nigeria's golden couple. When they arrived at galas, cameras flashed. When they walked into boardrooms, silence followed. To the world, their life was flawless. But inside those gilded gates, not everything gleamed. At the mansion's entrance, a tall iron gate stretched like the arms of a silent sentinel, and there stood Isa, the gateman. To visitors, he was invisible, just another uniformed servant who opened and closed doors. But to Adam, Isa was the last echo of her father's loyalty. Years ago, when Chief Okafor caught Isa sleeping hungry outside the gates during a rainstorm, he gave the young man food, clothes, and work. A man who guards my home will never sleep outside it. From that day, Isa swore his life would serve this family. Even after the chief's death, he never wavered. Still, no one truly saw him, not even Adam. She was busy trying to preserve her father's empire, balancing charity work with business demands and smoothing over Kemi's frequent absences. That morning, Kemi came downstairs sharply dressed, a navy suit hugging his frame. His cologne arrived before his voice. "Sweetheart, don't wait for me tonight. The board wants me late in a koi," he said, slipping his watch onto his wrist. His smile was flawless, but his eyes shifted too quickly. Adam frowned slightly. "Another late night, Kemi." He kissed her forehead with practiced ease. "You worry too much, my love. Enjoy the house. Enjoy life. Let me carry the stress." The sound of iron creaking announced Isa opening the gate. The black Mercedes purred out of the compound, carrying Kemi away, his phone already. As they left the apartment, Isa's tears had dried. Her steps were slow, heavy, but her jaw was set with determination. Adam glanced at her as they walked into the night. "What now, ma'am?" Isa's voice was calm, almost cold. "Now, Adam, we play his game, but this time on my terms." The mansion was unusually quiet. That evening, Isa dined with Kemi under the glittering chandelier, her face carefully arranged into a mask of calm. He spoke about business meetings and new investors, his tone warm, his laughter smooth, but every word scraped against her skin. She nodded, smiling, faintly, hiding the storm brewing inside her. When dinner ended, she slipped into her father's study where Adam waited in the shadows. In her hand was a small, black recorder. "He must be caught with his own words," she whispered. "If I accuse him without proof, he will twist everything. He will call me mad. But if I let him believe he has one," Adam's jaw tightened, "then he will speak freely." Isa nodded. "Tomorrow I will bait him again. He must think I trust him with the accounts." The next morning, sunlight poured into the dining room as Kemi descended the staircase in his crisp suit. Isa sat waiting, her tea steaming. "My love," she began softly, "I've been thinking, perhaps I should let you handle Daddy's confidential accounts. You know business better than me." Kemi froze mid-step, his eyes flashing before he quickly covered them with a smile. He walked over, kissed her cheek. "That is very wise, Isa," he said warmly. "I've always told you, leave the stress to me. You deserve peace." She lowered her gaze, hiding the recorder tucked carefully in her pocket, already running. Later that evening, she excused herself, claiming she wanted to rest in the garden. Instead, she slipped quietly into the corridor above the study. From there, she could see him through the half-open door, phone pressed to his ear, his voice low and playful. "Yes, bell gone," he chuckled. "She's finally giving me the details. The fool thinks I love her. By next week, the accounts will be ours." Isa's hand gripped the banister until her knuckles went white. "Yes, baby," Kemi continued. "5 million, the shares too, will drain it slowly. She won't even notice until it's gone. Then we vanish." Pause. Then his voice dropped sharp and amused. "Love her? No. I only married her for her father's empire. She was easy, naive. Nothing more than a ticket to wealth." Isa's body trembled, but she stayed silent, the recorder capturing every vile word. When he ended the call, she slipped back to her room, her chest heaving. She stared at the small device in her hand, her tears falling onto it. For the first time in weeks, her heart carried not just pain, but relief. She finally held the weapon that could bring him down. Morning light streamed into the mansion, golden and deceptive. Isa sat at the breakfast table, her face calm, her body wrapped in stillness. Across from her, Kemi scrolled through his phone, humming softly as though the night before had been filled with love instead of betrayal. When the moment was right, Isa placed the black recorder on the table. She pressed play. Kemi's own voice filled the air. I only married her for her father's empire. She was easy, naive, nothing more than a ticket to wealth. Once the money is in my hands, we vanish. Let her beg. I don't care. She'll be nothing. The sound echoed against the dining hall's marble walls. Kemi froze. His spoon clattered into his plate. His eyes darted from the device to Isa's steady gaze. For a moment, his mouth opened, but no words came out. You think I am a fool, Isa said, her voice trembling with fury but controlled. You smile in my face while plotting my death in whispers. But God is my witness, Kemi. I am no one's fool. Kemi stammered, his charm slipping like a mask too heavy to hold. It's not what you think. I was only pretending, playing along. Save your lies. She cut in, her voice sharp as glass. The door burst open. Uniformed, officers stormed in, their boots echoing across the floor. Behind them stood Adam, tall and unyielding. Mr. Kemi Okafor, the lead officer said firmly, you are under arrest for fraud, theft, and conspiracy to commit murder. Was final. Femio, you are hereby sentenced for fraud, theft, and conspiracy to commit murder. The room erupted in noise. Reporters rushing, murmurs swirling. Femi's face crumbled as he shouted one last time, Adana, please don't let them take me. But the officers dragged him away, his pleas fading like dust in the wind. Adana sank back into her chair, her chest heaving. She did not smile. She did not weep. She only breathed as though for the first time in years, the air was truly her own. The days after the trial felt like walking through smoke. Adana signed the divorce papers in silence. Her name no longer chained to Femi's. The news outlets plastered her face everywhere. Aries survives betrayal. Wife of the year turns widow of trust. She ignored them all. Back at the mansion, she moved through the rooms with new eyes. Every corner, once tainted by lies, now became a place of remembrance. Her father's study, where she had found the ledger. The dining hall, where she had played the recording. The balcony, where she had once waited for a husband who never came home. One evening, she called a board meeting at her father's old office downtown. The director sat stiff, unsure of what storm might come next. But when Adana entered, veiled but regal, her voice was firm. There will be changes, she declared. From this day forward, no shadow dealings. Transparency will be our law. Loyalty will be honored above all else. My father built this empire on trust, and I will not let betrayal bury it. The room stirred with murmurs of approval. For the first time, Adana felt the weight of leadership not as a burden, but as her rightful crown. At the end of the meeting, she turned toward the back of the room. There stood Musa, awkward in his plain clothes, clutching his cap. Come forward, she said softly. He stepped forward, eyes lowered. Yes, madam. She gave him a faint smile. No, from today you will not call me madam. My name is Adana and you will stand beside me, not behind a gate. You are no longer just the gateman. You are my personal aide. My father trusted you and now so do I. Gasps filled the room. Musa's lips parted, his eyes wide with disbelief. He bowed deeply, his voice breaking. Adana, I am not worthy. You are more than worthy, she replied. Applause rose around them as Musa lowered his head, humbled and overwhelmed. That night, Adana stood on her balcony as the city lights glittered. The wind brushed her veil aside. Her chest still ached with scars, but in her eyes burned something new. Resolve. She whispered into the night as though her father could still hear. Daddy, I kept your promise. I will protect what you left. Inside, Musa arranged her schedule, his steps quiet but steady. He was no longer just the man at the gate. He was the shield she could finally lean on. And though Adana's heart was still heavy, she knew the ashes of betrayal could give birth to something stronger. The foundation of a new life. Weeks rolled into months, and slowly the storm began to clear. The mansion, once suffocating with lies, now pulsed with a new kind of life. Adana threw herself into rebuilding her father's empire, attending board meetings with fire in her voice and strength in her step. But she knew wealth meant nothing if it only fed the self. And so she launched the Okafor Foundation, a charity in her father's name, dedicated to widows, orphans, and struggling students. She called it not an inheritance, but an investment in people. On the day of the launch, the hall was filled with press, dignitaries, and community leaders. Adana stood at the podium in a simple navy gown, her voice calm but powerful. My father taught me that wealth is not about what we keep but what we give. For too long I let betrayal shadow his name. Today that ends. This foundation will carry forward the vision he lived for. Hope, dignity, and opportunity for those who have none. Thunderous applause followed. Cameras flashed. But for the first time, Adana did not feel like prey under their light. She felt like a beacon. Behind the curtain, Musa watched quietly. He wore no grand suit, only a simple tailored outfit she had insisted on buying for him. But he carried himself with the same calm dignity that had once kept him at the gates. Now he managed her schedule, handled calls, and protected her from vultures disguised as partners. The directors who once overlooked him now respected him. After the ceremony, Adana found him standing by the car, waiting as always. She smiled softly. Musa, she said. Yes, Adana, he replied, still awkward with the name, but obeying her wish. She studied him for a moment. You have stood by me in fire and storm. You see, I thought my strength came from wealth, from titles, but it came from people, from loyalty, from you. Musa lowered his gaze, his chest tightening. I only did what your father asked of me. No, she said firmly. You did more. You saved my life. For a heartbeat, the air between them grew heavy, unspoken words hanging like the night sky before a storm. But then Adana turned gracefully, sliding into the car. As the convoy pulled away, Musa sat in the front seat, his eyes scanning the road. He told himself he was only her aide, her shield. But deep inside, where duty met heart, something warmer flickered, something he dared not name. The city lights blurred past the windows, and Adana leaned back in her seat, whispering to herself, the worst is behind me. The future is mine to rebuild. Inside Kirky prison, Faye sat on a rusted bench, his once polished suit replaced with faded gray. Days dragged like years, each one stripping away the pride he once wore like armor. His face was gaunt, his voice hoarse from shouting innocence to walls that no longer listened. One afternoon, the heavy door creaked open. Belinda walked in, her heels clicking against the concrete floor. For a moment, his eyes lit up. "Belinda," he breathed, rushing to her side. "Finally, I knew you wouldn't abandon me. You're all I have left." But her face was cold. Her lips curled in disdain. She pulled her hand back before he could touch it. "Don't fool yourself," she said flatly. "You have nothing. No money, no power, no name. What life can you give me here? What future?" Femi's throat tightened. "But everything I did, it was for us." She laughed bitterly. "No, Faye. Everything you did was for greed. And greed eats its own. I will not waste my life waiting for a man rotting behind bars. Goodbye." She turned, perfume trailing, and left without another word. The door slammed shut and the echo swallowed him whole. Femi slumped to the ground, his chest heaving. Tears stung his eyes as he whispered to himself, "I betrayed the wrong woman. I destroyed the only life that mattered." That same night at the mansion, Adana stood by her balcony. The wind tugged at her veil as the city lights sprawled endlessly before her. Behind her, Musa entered quietly to deliver her schedule for the next day. "The Foundation has 3 meetings tomorrow," he said softly. "Shall I clear the evening so you can rest?" Adana turned, her eyes softening. For a moment, she simply looked at him, not as the gateman who once opened her gate, but as the man who had stood when everyone else betrayed her. "Musa," she said gently, "do you ever wonder why God placed you at that gate all those years ago?" He bowed his head. "Perhaps so I could keep my promise to your father." She stepped closer, her voice quiet but filled with meaning. "Perhaps also so I could see what loyalty looks like." After losing everything else, their eyes met, and for a heartbeat, silence bound them. Musa's chest tightened, his hands trembling against his cap. "Adana," she smiled faintly, her eyes glistening. "Come walk beside me." For the first time since he had stepped into the Okafor compound years ago, Musa crossed the gate not as a servant, but as her equal, a man whose loyalty had rewritten destiny. Above them, the city buzzed, alive with noise and promise. Behind them lay betrayal, chains, and shadows. Ahead lay freedom, rebirth, and the fragile spark of something more. And so the poor gateman and the billionaire lady stepped forward together, not into fairy tales, but into a truth forged by loyalty, scarred by betrayal, and crowned by hope. The gate had opened and nothing would ever close it.